All right, for this Yin Yoga class, we're going to focus on bound angle and additional stretches for the hips. A couple blocks would be nice to have if you've got them handy. And we're going to come into bound angle just to start. So I'm sitting here with my feet out in front. I'm going to take a really wide bound angle. So I'm taking my feet farther out and then soles of the feet together, letting the knees open just as far as they can comfortably open down towards the floor. They don't need to get to the floor. And then I'm going to take a block on its tallest height and place it between my feet and my head. If you need 2 blocks, 3 blocks, blankets, pillows, please feel free to use the props here. The point of the props in this pose, in this practice really, is not to lay on them and just restore. Okay, the point of the props is to teach your body some, it gives your body something to push against. So you're letting your forehead rest on the block here, but you're also from your core targeting some energy and directing it up to the forehead into the block. So the rest of your body hasn't just flopped on the floor. We're not just flopping around on bolsters and props. That does no good for the body. This is concentrated, active, mindful stretching so that you're not stretching too deep and you're not just dumping into flexibility. Have your arms where they're comfortable, whether they're out in front, or if you have additional support, extra blocks, as many as you can find, you could stick your hands up on 2 blocks if the floor seems too far away. You could always put a couple blocks under your knees, but again, it's not for your knees to flop down and try to get close to the floor. It's for your legs to have something to connect with and reciprocate some energy. And so here, even though your legs, if they're not touching anything, there's a gentle activation of the outer abductors or the outer thighs abducting your legs and your core. If you want to lower your block down, you could lower your block down after a few moments here. I'm going to go down 1 height to the 2nd height, and I've also moved my arms out away from each other. This helps me to resist the urge to pull into a forward fold with my arms. Again, I'm trying to make this forward fold active with my core and the hip flexors and the abductors. Focus on your breath, moving it into your back. Noticing with each breath any of the sensations that are becoming really obvious in your body. And just revisit the idea that you're anchoring here to these props on the floor, not just dumping into it. And then the breath is helping you to anchor. After being here a while, sometimes it just requires a little movement to let some extra tension dissipate. So I like to roll my forehead around on the block and take a few head rolls. And for you, it might be more of an actual lift up out of the deep forward fold, giving yourself a moment to come out of it, and then you can soften back into it. I am yet again here going to lower the block again to its lowest height so that I'm easing my body into its appropriate depth. Always toeing the edge of your threshold, so never going farther than your body or your mind can allow. And again, using your breath to anchor you here, anchor you to what's happening in your body, the actions required in your body, and the sensations that your body is trying to communicate with your mind. Noticing if between each breath you might be able to include a slight pause between the 2 breaths to give you more of an anchoring sensation. If at any point in time this is starting to become painful, it is time to come out of it. I'm going to stay here just a few more moments. And I'm actually going to lower down off that block completely And maybe for you, it's adding in extra height. So maybe you need to work your way up before coming out of it, because we are going to be here for about 5 to 6 more breaths. So maybe instead of going deeper, you need to come back up a little higher and prepare yourself to come out of it. If you are lowering your block out of the way as well and taking your forehead to your feet, what I've done here is take my arms between and behind the calves, between the legs, behind the calves, and then around the tops of my feet. And actively pressing my elbows back down into the floor. Again, engage the core so that you can direct length from the spine out through the third eye, through the forehead, wherever your head is resting on your feet. And just feeling the softening, the melting of the tension in your shoulders and your hips. And that does not mean dumping or dropping, right? So there's still an action. There's still muscle engagement and awareness. Just letting some tension dissolve and boosting that and assisting that with your breath and the core activation. And again, I'm going to start to come out of this in the next few moments. So if you know that you need to ease your way out of it just as you eased your way into it, you might want to bring a block back into play here and rest it under your forehead for the next couple rounds of breath. And then eventually move your way up to a seated position. But please take your time. I'm going to start to roll up now on an inhale, lengthening out of the bend, taking my hands back down to the floor, back to my feet, just kind of pressing my arms straight. I feel the back muscles now engage instead of shooting ramrod up to the ceiling in a seated position. So now I'm engaging the back muscles and pulling back up to seated. I'm going to take my hands behind, knees together, and just a brief moment here to release the front of the body. It was in a massive core work there. Maybe it didn't feel like it at the time, maybe, but over the long haul, you can feel it. Okay, I'm going to move into a bound angle here. So the heels move closer in. So that first expression that we were in was more of a turtle shape. And for this one, I'm not going to forward bend. I'm going to stay upright. So I've drawn my heels in closer, feet together. I've hooked my hands around the feet, and I'm drawing up with my back muscles now instead of forward folding with my core muscles. So again, you feel the grounding in the sit bones and the anchoring down from the back muscle, just as you did from your core out through your forehead on the block. You feel the back muscles anchoring down and rooting through your sit bones. And if it gets tired, you can always drop your chin, stretch it out, and then lift back up. Notice where you're over gripping. Notice if the shoulders are starting to lift too aggressively and you're starting to become uncomfortable, and relieve that tension in your neck with gentle head movements. All right, I'm going to twist here. So right hand is going to come over to my left foot and my left hand behind. You could stay here, or if you wanted to, you could take your right hand to the left thigh. And when I did that, I felt really out of balance. I didn't like this. I feel like it was better with my hand to my foot. So notice what feels better for you. This should just be a gentle twist. I wasn't quite sure what to do with my hand in this position. It didn't seem natural for me. So make sure it feels natural for you. Come back through center on an inhale. And then we'll go to the second side twist. When you're ready, left hand can come over to the top of your right foot, or right on I'm pushing down on both feet. And I feel like that was actually pretty chill for me. I liked that. I should have just stayed there. I think I once again tried this on the second side. I felt like there was some redeeming quality to having my hand on my thigh, and I think I even tried leaning back here. And this is what you have to do in your practice. There's no right or wrong answer. And this is all you can do, is experiment and explore what feels good to your body. Then you know the things that don't feel good and you don't do them. And then you know going forward. It doesn't mean you can never do them again. Just keep experimenting and keep exploring. All right, and then with your next inhale, we'll untwist. Regrip your hands on the bottom of your feet. Use your outer thighs and outer hips to press your thighs down towards the floor. And then again, use your back muscles to lengthen your spine up to the ceiling. Big breath in. and a soft breath out. Okay, we're going to move into Janu Shirshasana next. Straighten out your right leg and take your left foot up inside of your right thigh. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold out over my right leg. Just feel it out. See what props you might need here. I'm going to grab a block. And so block is nice to have under the left knee. Another block is also nice to have under your forehead, whether it's on the inside of your right leg, which is what I'm trying first. So again, the whole thing about playing and seeing where your body feels best. And the block seemed too high for me. In fact, it was a placement issue. So I tried it a couple different heights here on the inside of my leg, and I didn't like that. I was feeling more of a pull on my left sideways, like I was crunching too much in the obliques. So what I did was I lifted that block up and put it on top of my shin. And now I feel a little bit more in line. There still seems to be a little bit of an imbalance in my hips, and I felt a little crooked. And the classical variation of the pose is right here, folding out right over your right leg. But again, we're just trying to get into the fascia and the connective tissues and open up some of that fascial stickiness. So after a few moments here, I then realized, well, what if I tried to put the block on the outside of my leg? And then when I folded towards the block outside of my leg, I felt a beautiful stretch in the left side of my waist, down into the quadratus lumborum, the low back, and even down into my glutes. And this also helped me to resist my left hip falling back behind my right hip. Use your hands wherever they help to enhance this posture. So I'm using my hand on the sole of my foot, the ball of my foot, pulling my toes back. And that seems to really shake up the calf muscles a little bit and the lower back of my right leg. If that doesn't feel good, then that's not for you. And if the block felt better for you inside of your leg, then that is for you. I'm going to take the block out from under my knee now because I feel like since I've resituated that block to the outside of my right leg, I needed my left knee free to move forward a little bit more, which is really the energetic direction and intention that you want in Janu Shirshasana. The left knee squeezing forward and in towards the right knee. And I'm going to take the last few moments without the block now, resting my forehead on my shin. If you need to add in an extra block, see how it feels. You know, what works for me does not work for everybody else, and vice versa. This is such an individual style, an individual practice. It's such a personal practice. It should be tailored perfectly just for you. And then on your next couple rounds of breath, make your exit strategy. Maybe you need to lift up only halfway, a quarter of the way. But use your back muscles and your hands on the floor, and then start to walk yourself upright again. I'm going to turn this into a revolved expression of Janu Shirshasana. Just going to lift my hips a little bit so I can turn my left knee out to the side. And my right foot is still pointing straight forward. My hips now are facing out in the diagonal corner of the right side, the left side of my mat. All I'm going to do is lean out over my right leg and then start to turn the torso open towards the ceiling. So my left hand isn't going to reach overhead. I just really want to focus on the hips here. You could play with shelving your head with your hand, a block. So my elbow is on my right shin. If you want a block inside of your leg for your elbow or outside of your leg, same thing as Janu Shirshasana before. I play with this. You've got to find the right place for you. For me, I felt like the block under my cheek on top of my shin, that was the most comfortable. Because it could, again, get me to engage my right side obliques, my right side core, and not so much that it cramped, but enough that it could send some intention forward towards my right foot out through the crown of my head. And then I was playing around here. It was just experimenting, and a couple of things I experimented with I did not like. I had a block behind me. It didn't work out so well. I thought maybe it would help to have that hand up a little higher. This was fine. I put the block on my left thigh and pressed down into my left hand because, again, this practice is not about just dumping and folding over blocks and letting blocks make the shape of your body. Your body is not the shape of a block. It shouldn't take that shape. So the blocks are there just to help remind certain areas to anchor and engage. And for this, with the hand on the block, it was engaging my armpits, my lats, my upper back to keep my left shoulder from rounding down. And then a couple more breaths here. Finding and staying and enjoying that place where you can anchor with your breath and still enjoy the freedom of exploration in these shapes and these postures. This is a practice of exploration. Feel your face soften and relax, diffusing any tension here, other than the muscular engagement required to be safe and comfortable in this pose. All right, let's take the next few moments to prepare to come back up to seated. So lifting up using your left side waist to come up to seated. You can pause there and center for just a moment. And then I'm going to resituate myself to face forward. I'm going to get ready for the second side, Janu Shirshasana. First, I just like to take a moment here in a seated Pashasana or a seated chair and just open the chest. And maybe a quick bound angle. I'm going to take bound angle with the soles of my feet together. Anchoring down through the sit bones, lifting my back up with my back muscles, pressing my chest through with my back muscles, rooting down from the core, the outer thighs, the outer hips. Even your feet have a role here to play. They're active, flexing your ankles, pushing your feet together at the same time. All right, and then when you're ready, slowly transitioning into Janu Shirshasana. So your left leg will straighten out, and now your right foot will come up inside your left thigh. Have your blocks handy if they were helpful in the first side. And just starting the forward fold here with an easy little lean out over your left leg. Block under your hands, block under your forehead. But again, just taking your time to get into the forward bend. Start with a quarter fold, maybe halfway, and then 3/4. Here I'm showing you could use 2 blocks stacked up. A chair seat, a chair bottom, or chair seat is really nice. You can rest your head on the chair seat. Keep drawing again that right knee in towards your left knee. So there's a feeling of hugging your spine from all directions, but not shortening the spine because of that hugging action. So instead, the hug increases length in the spine. And just slowly adjusting your blocks, maybe lowering it down 2 breaths, 3 breaths at a time. Playing where you want to with where you want to put those blocks. So as I did on the first side, notice, is it better on the inside? And it may be different on both sides. This side, I really wasn't feeling that massive pull on my right side like I was on the first. But I am going to go ahead and take the block on the outside of my left thigh just so I can see, and I want to compare. It's always a matter of testing, retesting, and comparing sides and comparing, this movement to that movement. And from this day to that day, it changes daily. And if you do take your stretch on the outside of your left leg, notice that gentle stretch on the outer right hip, the low right back. And try not to then overwork the left side. So we don't want the overwork to move from right to left. We want there to be more of a balance, more of a lengthening equally from side to side. And again, if you wanted to use your hand to gently pull your toes back, or if you want to then lower your forehead to your shin, feel your sit bones Stretching behind you, really far behind you, lengthening out. And then if you activate your left thigh, the top of your left thigh, that might help any intense sensations that are starting to become bothersome in the back of your left sit bone and hamstring area. So in a few moments, I'm going to come out of this, and you can stay longer if you'd like. But if you are also going to come out of this, you might at this point start to think of coming up in those tiered releases. So if it's just inhaling up a quarter of the way and then another quarter, just easing your way up into a seated position. And then after about another breath or two here, then you can start to move up to seated if you have not already begun that tiered release. So here I'm going to inhale, lengthen out, and I've lifted up just about a quarter of the way, and then I'm going to come up about half the way, and then about 3/4 of the way up. I'm at a slight diagonal here, just letting the back muscles recover from being stretched because now they're going to work again. And then I'm going to switch this into the revolved variation of Janu Shirshasana, Parivrit Janu Shirshasana. It's not the full-blown posture where you would take both arms overhead and twist open. It's a very gentle expression of the pose. Sometimes I feel like I get more out of this pose when I take it down a notch, out of that intense expression. So simply sliding your left hand down to your left foot and keeping your right shoulder open. Right hand can rest on your thigh. Start with a bit of a rotation open in your torso, so a bit of an opening twist. And then you can take your left elbow to your shin and rest your head in your hand. In this expression of Janu Shirshasana, it's different than the one you just did where the right knee was squeezing into the midline. Now you're feeling more of a push out with the right knee, almost like you're pressing your thighs out in a wide angle pose, except your right knee is bent and your left leg is straight. Both legs are not straight. The block can come into play here. Then you could put your elbow on the block inside of your thigh. You can try it behind your thigh if you'd like. Again, play with it. See what works best for your body. And I like the block under my head. This just gives me the best support, and I don't feel the weight of my head pulling down and cramping the left side or overstretching my right side. And again, play with where your right hand should go. It can drape behind your back if you'd like and wrap around your left hip. You can just let it rest on your thigh. But keep pressing out through your left foot. And again, engage your left quadriceps to help with the pull on the back of your left leg. So there's some active resistance on the top to prevent overstretching on the bottom of your left thigh. And you can feel here your core is active. There's a twist happening from the rotator muscles on the spine. And you can feel the deep muscles that attach to your spine, rotating the spine open. And it doesn't have to come from your arms. This isn't a leverage twist. This is an internal core twist. And notice here, your belly is engaged. The left side obliques are engaged to lengthen out through the left side of your head so that contact on the block isn't just heavy and dead weight. All right, and then we're going to inhale, come up to seated. Take a moment when you do lift back up to an upright position, and then you can situate yourself back to face forward. Once again, I've got my feet on the floor, knees bent, hands behind, just a little bit of lift of the heart, like a little seated cat-cow stretch. I'm going to grab the blocks again here, and I'm going to put a block under my feet for bound angle yet once again. So I'm taking the block lengthwise so that my feet are on it and the outer edges of my feet, my heels especially. And then I'm going to open my knees out, feet together. My feet are going to slide forward a little bit on the block, and that's fine. Let them move. And then you can fold down towards your feet. Now that second block might come in handy here to put on top of your feet and rest your forehead. There you go. And so I've decided to scooch my sit bones back a little bit just because of the shape of my pelvis and my femurs. It wasn't comfortable. You don't need to have yourself crunched up there. There's a rounding in your spine here, and you should feel that rounding in your spine, but not a crunching in the front of your body. So if the rounding in your spine creates a pinching in the diaphragm, it's doing you no good with your breath. If you want to turn up the energy level here and more of an active yin practice, you can take your hands under from the inside of your legs, behind your calves, so your elbows hook your calf muscles. And then hook your fingers on the ends of the blocks and pull back. So you're using your hands to pull your chest forward. The block was too much for me, so I took it out and just let my head rest on my feet here. You decide what you need. If you scooch the block out and you go, nope, you think, where's that block? Get it back in there, right? If it was too intense, get it back. And then as you see, if you're closing in and not looking at me, just think, imagine it, visualize it. I went from this extreme domed rounding in my back to more of an even curvature in my spine, and it was from getting rid of that block. And so now my spine from tailbone to head is more of a smooth curve rather than an extreme hump. And again, I'm really using my arms here. I'm using my biceps to bend my elbows and my upper back muscles pulling my shoulders away from my ears. Not that they're pulling down, they're just maintaining their lineup with the collarbones. If this is really intense in your core, you might take an inhale and lift and release the core for just a brief moment, and then exhale, round back down into it. That'll also release your arms for a brief moment. I do remember my arms were getting kind of tired here. And then again here, just notice what can open, what can expand, what's being unblocked. Like you're unwrapping a package and things are just softening out and expanding. And then as you inhale, lift up to seated, pressing the weight back into your sit bones. Again, give your back a moment to come out of the stretch and back into a working position. Now I'm going to take my hips up closer to the block. I'm eventually going to lie down here, so please take your time if you need to come to your elbows first and rest, and then lower down onto your back. And then you can use your elbows to scooch in as close as you can and get your sit bones up towards the block. Arms can rest above head, your feet are resting on the blocks, and let your knees gently open. And again, they're not just flopping and dropping. So there's some energetic resistance here. Your belly is engaged. You might even put your hand on your belly and feel the breath moving from your abdomen up to your chest. And you can feel the vibration there, that pulsation of breathing. And it's like an oscillation of a fan in and out of your nose, waving up and down your body. Especially in a reclining position, you can really feel the breath oscillating. I'm just making sure I've got some space between my low back and the floor, so my sacrum and hips are on the floor, but my low back has its natural curvature, which is why I like the arms above head. It helps to enhance that, and just remind your low back to stay open. So lying on the floor here, you feel more of a yielding, more of a surrender to the ground. You can kind of sense that release and that sinking happening here. Again, it's not just a dumping and letting the ground holding you. It's not just dumping in. There's a connection between you and the ground. There's a bit of a resistance. And it's not a forceful push. It's an awareness of being held by the ground. You can feel your breath grow here with each breath, nourishing your body and fostering that sense of relaxation, even with this really amazing opening in the hips. And it shouldn't be intense, but you're aware of it. You're aware that there's sensation in the hips. There's a gentle compression in your hips. nourishing the hips, supporting and strengthening your hips. And sense your core here. It is the essence of our being. It's where all of our movement happens from, is the core. Movement comes out of the core, moves out through your arms and legs, from the spinal cord, from the nervous system. So really connect to the core here with your breath moving around it. And it's not a big core engaged movement here to lie on the floor, but the core isn't just soft, right? It's aware, it's awake. And then you notice it even more once you start to lift your knees up toward each other and put your feet on the floor. Being aware of the core supporting your posture here. It's not just the floor. Your core is also working to encourage lengthen your spine. Keep your block there and take your left foot on the block, and then straighten your right leg up to the ceiling. You might simply stay here with your right foot up, moving your foot around a couple of times. If you can reach your right hand comfortably to your right foot, or maybe your hands can come behind your calf or down even to your hamstrings, play with it. Try each variation out and see which one works best for you. Your shoulders are probably going to lift off the floor, but you want to feel an energetic pull back of the shoulder blades. So the shoulder blades are not squeezing or pulling or drawing. They're just energetically engaging towards the floor. So I'm not pulling my shoulder heads down to the floor. They're just moving in that direction. And then if you'd like to, you could straighten your leg out on the block. So the block just lands behind, halfway on the calf and halfway on the hamstrings. Being aware of your core here and your breath moving around that. Again, letting the breath anchor you here, especially when postures can be intense, and this one could be intense in the hamstrings. Your jaw is soft, your face is soft, and you're not bending your elbows to pull your foot towards your face. So let your arms stay straight and feel that pull happen from your upper back rather than your biceps. If you want, you could simply take your right hand to the ball of your right foot and pull those toes down. That will fire up the back of the right leg, the calf muscles. So be mindful of that it's not too intense. And I myself personally, I really like to interlace my hands and create a bit of a saddle for my heel. And then your elbows can gently bend. Again, it's not a massive biceps curl. It's just a nice little pull down from the upper back, adding in a soft elbow bend. Resist the urge to get your face to lift up towards your shin. The two do not need to meet. There's no need for that. And especially in a posture that could be intense, go delicately into this pose and lightly. Be kind to yourself. We expect so much from our hamstrings, and we expect that we become flexible with this practice. And flexible is not a good word for your body. It's a good word for your perception, for your mind. It's really good for that. But for your body, mobility is much better, not flexibility. I'm going to add in a different movement here in just a moment. So just to start, I'm moving my foot around, pointing the toes, flexing the ankle. And it's just nice to get the blood moving back up to the foot, especially if you feel like your foot's getting cold or tingly. Moving the muscles around the ankle and the shin will help pull the blood back up to that distal end of your body. In the next few moments, I'm going to bend my knees. So you're welcome to move into this at any point in time if this stretch is starting to become too long for you and you're starting to feel any burning or pain in the sit bones. I'm going to move into a half happy baby pose. And as I do, I'm going to bend my left knee and put my left foot on the block. So as you're ready, you can transition into that next expression of this pose here. When you do pull your right knee down towards the floor, you feel your left hip lift off the floor, and that's fine. Let it happen. Let that do what it's going to do. And you can feel your shoulder blade, left side, gently hugging the floor. I'm going to add in a straightening in the right leg. You can't really see it here, but you can push out into your right leg and straighten out the right leg. Now I'm going to turn over to the outside edge of my left foot. And I just want to show you, you can put it on the floor, but for me, putting it on the floor dropped my ankle too low and sent my knee up too high, and it jammed the head of my femur into my hip. There was no rotation. So when I lifted my left foot back up on the block, my knee could open up a little bit more. So you're pressing out through your right foot in this if you're taking the straight leg version, and your left knee is pressing away. But at the same time, you're drawing those two front hip bones in toward each other so that your belly button is being hugged by your hips. And that's the resistance that's going to keep the stretch from going beyond your edge and beyond your given threshold. My left arm is up to the side, little goalpost arm. It just helps to anchor my shoulder, anchor my breath. And then again, if you want a little fire up there, you can take your hand and cup the bottom of your toes and pull the right toes towards your shin or towards your wrist. This is just a little assist for the fascia to open and shear. It does not mean you don't have to do it if you don't feel right, and it's not about getting anywhere. It's not about getting your foot closer to the floor. All right, I'm going to come back up through center in the next breath now, and then you can release your hand from your foot and bend your right knee back down to the floor. And then you can take the block over a little bit. If you want to kick it over with your left foot, you can just stay here in a constructive rest for a moment to let your low back relax if that was in any way, shape, or form getting crampy or pinchy or tight. And then when you're ready, step your right foot on the block. And then your left leg up to the ceiling, straightening your left leg up. We can start with some simple movements, rolling the ankle around. Maybe this is where you stay. You're welcome to use a yoga strap, a yoga belt here. That's perfectly fine. Or a band, any kind of a TheraBand that you've got, therapeutic band. And then when you're ready, you can add in the hands if you want to take them either behind your thigh or your calf muscles. And so be careful with your shoulders. They shouldn't be pulling up nor pulling down. The middle upper back muscles right in between the shoulder blades, the muscles that line the spine, those muscles are just keeping the shoulder blades in place. So think of that action as a stabilization rather than a drawing, a contraction, or a movement. You're not trying to move your shoulder blades with those muscles. You're just trying to keep them in place so they don't run away from you and jump off your back. And then your hands can hook your left foot if you want. See if you can soften your face. You can feel the block holding your foot up. You can feel the floor holding your body up. And with the foot on the block, it's just a nice little release for your hips so you can get more of a pelvic tilt to allow the foot and the left leg to stretch a little deeper. And by deeper, I don't mean, you're going beyond your edge again. It's just to be able to move it in a different direction to tap into a deeper area that maybe we couldn't get in otherwise. And again, if you want to put your left hand on your left foot and pull the toes back towards your shin, you can fire up the calf and Achilles area there. If you liked your other side, if you'd like the leg to be straight on the block, you could straighten out your right leg here with the block, holding the back of your knee between the mid-calf and mid-thigh area. And then if you wanted to add in the little saddle or stirrup, if you will, for your heel, you could interlace your hands around your heel and draw your shoulder blades back into place, again with those muscles that are keeping them stabilized. You can feel your breath and the core muscles sustaining your posture so that you can breathe from belly up to chest, from front to back, and then also from the inside out and outside back in. So you can feel your breath moving three-dimensionally here. Notice if you're starting to feel heavy anywhere, or if like there's an imbalance in weight or an imbalance of effort, and try to balance that back out just by simply noticing these areas. And again, if your feet are starting to feel tingly or cool, you can move the foot around to get the blood to move back up to your toes. And then just take a moment to notice what you're feeling here beyond the physical sensations. And if it's not going beyond physical, then that's where your practice is, and let it be there. Maybe for you, it's simply noticing the differences between sides, but being okay with that and reacting to each side kindly and with a sense of lightheartedness and delicately, right? It's always being delicate with yourself. And then again, within the next few moments, I'm going to switch this up into that bent knee variation. So please do this at any point in time if this posture is getting to be too intense. In this expression, bend the knee. You could always go back into a straight leg variation too. I love it when students take control of their practice and do the things that feel good for them. I mean, I feel like that's the beauty of this practice, is you have control over it, and gosh, you can do what feels good. So bend your left knee here if you're ready, and pull the left thigh down towards the floor. And again, with your right foot coming to the block, you're going to feel that right hip lift. This just keeps the flexibility in the hips, the mobility in the hips safe for the SI joints. And then adding on the straightening in the leg, if that makes sense to your body. I usually have to fix my knee, former injury. Gotta get the tendons to move around the bone. It's fun. And then the right foot to the block, opening out that knee. So again, you can try it if you prefer your foot on the floor, but my body makeup, I need that foot on the block to help the hips open. Now what I'm doing is, it's really hard here. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little bit of teeter-tottering happening side to side. This side was challenging for me. I ended up moving the block over a little bit more because I felt like I was a little off-centered. I felt like there was some more of that weight shift happening to the left. And this is what I was talking about earlier, noticing if there's any heaviness or anything moving from one area to the other, and see if you can balance it out. And that may take moving around. Often it simply just takes an internal contraction. So right here, I'm squeezing my low belly and drawing those two hip bones toward each other. Okay, and I'm just going to slowly give this a little extra hand assist. If you want the extra, take it. I'm taking my hand to the heel on this side. So on the first side, I suggested pulling under from the foot, from the ball of the foot. Now I'm taking my hand to the heel and bending my left elbow and pulling that foot down to the floor. But counteract that with the right knee pressing out away from you. Breathe in and out of your nose. Smooth out that breath. And again, in the next few moments, I'm going to come out of this. Please take your time if you need extra time here. This can be a challenging one. So as you're ready, the foot comes back up to the ceiling and your right foot to the block. If you're taking some extra time, please catch up when you're ready. And then I'm just going to slowly step onto the floor with both feet. And again, let those hips re-level out. Let the thigh bone sink back down into the hips. Let your spine open up here. All right, I'm going to scooch that block out of the way for the next movement. Hug your right knee into your chest and stretch your left leg out long on the floor, and just pause here for a few moments with a gentle Apanasana. Almost like this is a recovery from those deep stretches. You can feel the hugging. You can feel the connection here in your body. Kind of squeezing back in, resetting everything. Just appreciate the simplicity of this posture. And after a few moments, even the work in the front of the hip that has to happen here, it's amazing how something so simple can be so challenging. Especially if you just take a few extra moments to be in it. Move your foot around if you want, stretch your ankle around, move your toes. All right, and then I'm going to switch sides. As you're ready, right foot out, left knee in. And you might feel your head lift up a little bit or your shoulders lift up to catch your left knee. But once you get connection, then let your head gently rest on the floor again and your shoulders. It's not as if you're pushing into the floor with your head. So just feel your head being supported by the ground. It's a light anchoring sensation there. That seems contradictory, but it is what it is. It's the anchoring down, but without a sense of heaviness, without a sense of, you don't feel like you can't move. And it's a gentle anchoring. Just feeling that gentle lock in the hip, the squeezing of the hip joint. It's so good for the hip joint, that gentle compression, putting a good stress on your hip. Again, this is strengthening for your hips. And you can move your toes here. Last few moments, stretching out your ankle, toes, spread your toes apart, point your toes, flex your ankle. Noticing all the movements that can happen in the foot with all those joints and all those little bones. It's an amazing makeup, that foot. All right, and then release your left foot back to the floor. We're going to move into a supported bridge shape next. So you can take the block on its skinny side or its lowest side, the biggest surface area, and stick it right under your sacrum. Feet can come apart as far as you'd like. And this is something you may have to work with a few moments to set up. Sometimes you're lucky enough to get right into the perfect one right from the get-go. And other times it takes a little maneuvering. So if you're on your block and you need to lower it down, please adjust. If you want to turn your toes out or your toes in, please adjust. Notice what feels best for you. You might let your knees rest gently in toward each other. And sometimes it's even nice here to have a second block to squeeze with your thighs. If you feel like your tendency is to maybe let go a little too much here. Feel this beautiful tractioning from your back up to your hips. So you feel this length in your spine from your shoulder blades going up towards your hips. And feel that breath almost like it's falling up into your lungs when you breathe. Gravity now is going in the opposite direction, helping your breath to move in a little easier. And notice if your chin is feeling too close to your chest, simply lengthening out your neck and resting more on the back of your head rather than on the base of your skull. Feel in this very basic relaxation posture, there's a sense of energy. There's a sense of buoyancy in your energy. It's a little lift, a little energizing. And that bolster to your energy center is for your awareness. So you have an extra energy, an extra like a Red Bull, I guess, for your awareness, or a shot of espresso or tea whatever we're doing these days for energy. You feel like that's like a little boost to your awareness center. You can feel your hips here. You can feel your spine. You can feel your breath. You can feel your hips in space. And that's a really cool thing to feel when you're up off that floor just a few inches, feeling your hips in space. And feeling the space in your pelvis, the softness in your pelvis. Your breath can even connect to your pelvis here, having an effect on the energy above and below the respiratory diaphragm, up into your throat, down into your belly, low belly, pelvic area, breathing up and down your spine. And then we're going to move here in just a few moments. So I just like to let you know this before you actually move so you can get your thoughts and your body together here. And maybe it's just a matter of thinking about moving first, that you can feel this little buzz and energy pick up. A little pickup in that boost of energy that you were feeling. A little tingling in your fingers, maybe even in your toes, knowing that you're going to move in a moment. And it happens simply with your breath. And then when you're ready, you can actually wiggle your fingers and your toes. Lift your hips and take the block out from underneath your hips as you lower down. Take a moment simply to feel your back out of that inverted back bend, back to its natural shape here. And then we're going to move into relaxation posture using those 2 blocks again. Pull the 2 blocks under your thighs end to end. So the blocks are above your knee, the back of your knee, into the mid thigh. And then you can fully feel your back release here. Take a brief moment here in a quiet shavasana. I'll just let you rest here in peace and quiet. And while you're here, just maybe taking a moment to revisit any of the awareness that I guided you through earlier through the practice, noticing the rooting, the anchoring, the lightness, the kindness, and the support here from the floor. All right, we're going to start to move again here very gently at first, just using your fingers and your hands, toes and wrists and ankles. You can stretch your arms above head and then stretch out through your feet. You can feel your heels lift up off the floor. Then draw everything in. Hug your knees into your chest and just stay here. Now with both knees, we did this previously with just one knee. Stay there as long as you'd like. And then when you're ready to come to seated, you can roll off to the side and push up. I'm just going to use these blocks when I do come to seated. You can move them out of the way. You can sit on them anywhere where you can just come to a position, seated position, feeling tall and confident and strong in your body. And take a moment to bow to you and tell yourself good job.